Well, hello, it's Half Blind and Curious. This is a weird kind of yellow car-ish episode because I'm here with Isla. Hello, Isla.
Hello, Alan.
Well, you're here for all of them, really, aren't you?
I'm always here.
Yeah, you're in most of the things. But today we're going to be talking about the UK election, what it is, how you get involved, who's competing in it, for lack of a better term, and what happens then, and so on. So that's going to be fun. Are you at all engaged in this, Isla? I thought I wouldn't be, but I'm more engaged than I thought I would be.
Not that engaged, to be honest. I've been trying to avoid it.
Oh.
It's just like every time I look at the news, it's just frustrating, and then I go away again.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Sometimes you get engaged, sometimes you don't. I wasn't engaged in 2017. I am this time, so
Yeah.
that's how it works. Yes, it's an election. It's a general election. All seats are up for grabs, essentially. There's a 650 seat parliament, and it's divided into roughly equal constituencies by population. So, just for an example, right now I live in Edinburgh North and Leith, and you live in
Edinburgh West.
Edinburgh West, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Edinburgh also has East and South.
And Southwest.
And Southwest, yeah. So that's 5. So that's kind of how it works. And they'll have various parties standing in each of them. So that's basically how that goes. There's one seat which, by convention, no one stands in except the incumbent. That's the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, though that convention's starting to break down. And there's also the seats that, if Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland win, they won't take up. So there's a difference between an actual majority and a notional majority, but we'll get to that. But what you probably want to know is how you can take part in the first place, and Isla has plenty of good information for you there on how you get involved in the election.
Yep, I do indeed. So I'm going to read this straight from the government website, so you know it's absolutely correct.
Which is, by the way, in case someone wants it.
It is gov.uk. Gov.uk.
Cool, so go for it.
Okay, so to vote in the general election on the 12th of December, you must be registered to vote. So it's already too late to register to vote.
Yeah.
So if you're not registered, you're not voting. You must be aged 18 or over on the day of the election. So on the 12th of December, if it's your birthday and you're 18, you can vote. And if you're older than that, you're fine. You must also be a British, Irish or qualifying Commonwealth citizen. So basically, if your country has at one time or other in the past been British or is still British, you can vote. As long as you have leave to enter or remain in the UK or you don't require that leave. So if you're allowed in the UK to stay and you're from one of those countries, you can vote.
And it's worth saying that British and Irish, the reason they make that plain is because, well, they share a land border with us. Parts of Northern Ireland identify with being Irish rather than British. There are also just such strong links between the countries that it would be unfeasible not to.
Yeah, and prior to independence, there were Irish MPs in the UK Parliament. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, the on the ground, the intertwining is so massive that it would just be unfeasible.
Yeah, there are so many Irish people living in the UK and UK people living in Ireland.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's that.
Yeah.
So that's who can vote.
All right. So the other point is you can't be illegally excluded from voting, but I doubt there's many of you listening to this podcast.
How many of you are currently serving a custodial sentence listening to this podcast? Give me a holler, holler, holler from HMP, wherever.
Or are the Queen.
Oh yeah, are you the Queen? Is Her Majesty the Queen listening to this podcast? What if she is?
Oh, that would be awesome.
Hello!
Hey, the Queen.
That is her first name now, is it?
Good morning, good evening, or whatever time it is, Elizabeth.
Right, so yeah, don't be the Queen and don't be serving a custodial sentence, please.
Yeah.
Those are pretty good rules.
Yeah.
So Right. How do you go about voting?
Right.
So,
All right, so I'm allowed to vote.
Yeah.
And I want to vote. So there's three things I can do. I can either vote in person, or I can vote by post, or I can get someone else to vote for me, which is called voting by proxy. And I can't vote online. Not like in Estonia where you can vote online. You can't do that in the UK.
That's very true. So you're decided who to vote for. You're going down to a polling station.
Yeah.
Explain your general experience.
Okay, so usually I've got my polling card, which comes in the post a few days before, and it tells me where my polling station is. And then I go to the location, and they've got lists saying if you live at these addresses, go to this desk. If you live at that address, go to that desk. Go to the desk, and they say, okay, they find your name on the list, make sure you're on the list and actually registered to vote, and they give you the piece of paper which says, here's all the candidates. Then they say, go over there. There's these little wooden boxes that you basically go in, and you have a little pencil in the boxes, and you write a little cross in the box on the piece of paper next to the person that you want to vote for.
Yeah, any identifying mark will do.
Yeah.
As a man in Wales found out to his cost when he drew a penis next to a Conservative candidate a few years ago, and it counted as an identifying mark.
Yeah.
That candidate won by 4 votes.
And by identifying mark, you don't mean it should identify you. If it could say Isla, if I write Isla on that piece of paper, that will exclude that vote from being counted.
Yeah.
Because it will say who's voted. The whole point is it's secret. So as long as it can identify who you voted for, but not who has voted.
And there are large print versions, tactile versions and stuff available. You know, most disability activists would probably say you could do more, but those are the options available at the moment. You can do it that way if necessary.
Yeah.
But for most people listening to this, if you're going to vote, it's going to be a fairly straightforward process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you vote.
Yes.
So let's discuss who you could vote for, shall we?
Okay. So, depending on...
Yeah, depending on where you are in the UK, really, isn't it?
So there are some parties that are quite focused on some of the different nations in the UK, like so the SNP, the Scottish National Party, you'll only find them in Scotland. Plaid Cymru, you'll only find them in Wales. And there's a lot of Northern Irish parties.
Yeah, that's true. So if I give you a quick rundown, I won't mention the manifestos as such or anything like that. You can look them up for yourself. The trouble is, if I mention a manifesto and I make any sort of comment on it, then it could kind of lead to bias or whatever, and I don't want to do that. So we'll go by who the parties were at the last Parliament. So the biggest one was the Conservatives. They tried to keep the Parliament going for a while. They couldn't. The whole point of this election is that no one could really keep commanding the authority of the House. No one could have a consistent amount of numbers to carry legislation.
So you need to have more than half of the MPs in Parliament be your party.
Yeah, if you want to
get anything actually done.
Yeah. So, but they tend to be, because in our system we have this system where you have big internal coalitions of parties. Right, so the Conservatives would go from moderate to, some would say, hard right. So they would run from fairly middle of the road politics. Then you have a liberal faction, a kind of socially liberal, economically liberal faction. You have a socially conservative faction. Then you have a more, I would say, nationalist faction, I guess you would say. So they all exist within the Conservative Party. Within Labour, you have almost the mirror of that. You have a moderate section. You have a social democratic section, which is kind of larger state and more state intervention to steer the economy, not outright socialist. That's another faction. They do have a small outright socialist faction as well, though that faction is growing over the past 3 to 4 years. So they exist within the parties. That's a huge gamut to run. Then you've got the Liberal Democrats, which still kind of show the fact that they were a Liberal Party and a Social Democratic Party joined together. So they have a Liberal right and a Liberal left within the party. Would you say that's a good summary of the three main positions?
Pretty much, yep.
Yeah. So those are the three main parties standing across the UK. There are also the Greens. Self-explanatory, I suppose. They would be on the Green left. They would be probably socialist, you could say.
Yeah.
Certainly to the left, social democratic. But their main focus is environmental issues.
Yes.
That's their main deal. Then you have the Brexit Party, who are a new party. They are led by the former UKIP leader Nigel Farage, though they're not standing in every seat.
No.
Yeah, they stood aside every current Tory or Conservative seat. They're not standing in, so they're only standing in the others. And apart from getting Brexit done, very few people know what their ideas are, because that's not really their pitch. Their pitch is, we need to get Brexit and we need to get it now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of their thing. So it's difficult to describe where they stand politically between left and right. Just kind of populist, would you say?
Yeah, pretty much.
And then we come to the regional parties. The Scottish National Party, as Isla was saying, they kind of dominate things up here.
Yeah.
So
they have more than half of the MPs in Scotland.
Oh yeah, by a good way.
Because basically, it's about just under 50% support for independence in Scotland.
Yeah.
And there's only one party that stands for independence, so they've got a fairly consolidated vote.
Scottish Greens they do as well, but they're not a big party. But we'll get to all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's their main thing is promoting Scottish independence. And they kind of run the gamut from left to right across the board. They have one kind of unifying goal.
Yeah.
And then you have Plaid Cymru, which is a Welsh nationalist party. Then in Northern Ireland, they have completely different parties.
Yeah. So you won't hear about... Well, you might hear a tiny bit about the Conservatives, but because they do have some people standing for election in Northern Ireland, but all the other mainland UK parties don't stand there.
No, that's true. So you've got the main ones would be the DUP on the Unionist side, the Democratic Unionist Party, and then Sinn Féin on the nationalist side, who want a united Ireland.
Yeah.
So those parties are there. Those are the big ones. And if Sinn Féin win seats, they won't take them. They won't swear an oath to the Queen, and they can't bring themselves to sit in a UK Parliament, but they still believe their constituents should be represented by someone who does that. Yeah. So, yeah, that's Sinn Féin. And then the smaller parties consistently or usually have been the Ulster Unionists and the SDLP, the Social Democratic Labour Party. And I guess over the years they would have been considered more moderate. I don't know how much those terms really are helpful in a discussion like that. But yeah, they would be considered more moderate. Yeah. And then you have the Alliance Party, which is kind of like the Lib Dems.
Yeah. Pretty much.
As they are broadly middle of the road politically. So those are the parties. Have I done an okay job?
You've done a pretty okay job, yeah.
Okay, cheers. But you might want to know then, once you've decided who you're voting for and you know how to go and vote, how do you follow along on the night? How does the actual system work, Isla? Okay,
so on the night, 10 o'clock at night, all the polling stations close unless there are still people queuing to vote and they're still allowed in, but nobody who isn't queuing is not allowed in. Anyway, that's a bit over technical, but 10 o'clock at night, polling stations close, grab the big black boxes full of ballot papers and take them to the counting centre. Some locations in the UK really like to race to be the first, which is a fun thing. So usually about 11:30. I think is it Sunderland?
Yeah, usually Sunderland like to be the first.
They like to be the first. They employ teams of sixth formers to run. They can't vote yet, but they can.
They can run with papers.
Run with boxes from big black vans into the polling stations, and then there are hundreds of people employed to take those pieces of paper, look at them, and figure out which X is in which box. And then they count them and put them in piles. Say there's like 100 and 100 and 100 or whatever. And then they figure out how many votes there are for each party, each person. No, each person, because we technically don't vote for parties, we vote for people.
Yeah, technically speaking. So you might like your MP, but you don't like the party, or you might like a particular candidate.
Yeah.
But you don't like the party, so you vote for the candidate.
Yeah.
And then, simple.
Yeah.
First past the post, whoever gets the most wins.
Yeah. So if you have 30% of the vote and everyone else has 29%, that's it, you're the MP.
Yeah. So it's a fairly simple system to understand.
Yeah.
You can, literally, if you could win every single seat by one vote in the whole country.
Yeah.
And be 100% of the parliament.
Yeah.
It's never happened before, and it probably never will. But technically, it could happen.
Strange night. That would be a strange night.
So, but yeah, that's how it happens, and then you find out who won in your constituency.
Yeah. So usually on a night there'll be several different broadcasters who are showing live coverage of the results. And because all the voting is by hand and not on computer, it could take a long time, and each constituency's votes comes in sort of a little one at a time, and over the whole night, which can go on for hours.
Yeah, and it's all haphazard, but it's great.
I mean,
TV.
it is great. It is great TV. One of my best elections was 1992.
Oh yeah, we sat and watched that.
You can watch. They actually rebroadcast that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
On BBC Parliament, and it was great. It was sad to say it was a great night.
Yeah, it was. I think I've watched every election since the 1971 when Heath got in. Because I'm boring like that.
Yeah.
I love election night.
Yeah.
I will watch any election anywhere.
So, even at 10 o'clock at night, there's already some idea of who the broadcasters think might win. So, during the day, they've been out asking people at a few carefully selected polling stations who are you voting for, and then they come up with this exit poll, which is basically who we think is going to win. And at 10 o'clock at night, there it is. We think this party is going to have this vote and this party is going to have that vote. And
it's best when they're wrong.
It's best when they're wrong, like in 1992.
92, 2017 they were wrong.
Yeah.
2015 they were sort of wrong. 2010, unfortunately, they got it too right. So everything went according to plan, and that was disappointing.
Yeah. But 1992 was incredible because before that time, they had thought that the Labour Party was actually going to win the election. In the exit poll, they said it was going to be a hung parliament, which means no majority for any party. By the end of the night, the Conservative Party had a majority.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what team you're on. If you get that kind of mad drama, then what a night election night can be.
Yeah.
And who knows what tonight's going to be? Most people in the last election had the Conservatives running away with it.
Yeah.
And then the exit poll came out. Boom. They got nowhere near like 300 or so in the exit poll, and just the shock. And there was me, there was you, there was our friend Stephen, our friend Vicky. Just the shock. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's that 10 o'clock exit poll. If you're an election fan, you get round and you watch out for that. Mm-hmm. Then the next thing to do is see how well it tracks, because it might not.
Yeah. So because it takes a long time throughout the night to count all the votes, and some places don't even bother counting throughout the night because they don't want to pay people to work at night. Mm-hmm. You get certain places where you'll focus on like the Prime Minister's constituency, obviously the leaders of the opposition parties and certain notable MPs, and they watch the votes come in. Or more interestingly, places where you don't quite know what's going to happen because the constituency, the people who are voting, they're kind of split. So you don't know who's going to win. Yeah. Last year, the last election, then there were an awful lot of places which we call
marginals.
Marginals. That's the word. It's like, what's the word?
Sometimes there were 3-way or 4-way marginals in Scotland. Yeah,
there was one constituency where there was 2 votes in it. If one person had decided to vote not for the party who won, but for the party who came second, it would have been tied.
Yeah.
In fact, I think they counted the votes 3 times there, and it
They did,
changed
yeah.
every single time.
Yeah, he did. It was crazy. And, you know, Scotland was the real unexpected battleground. It wasn't expected to happen. So we don't really know how this is going to pan out.
Yeah.
There are constituency maps that came out yesterday saying we think this is going to happen. But there could be a minimum of 70 seats up for grabs. And if enough of them do crazy things, then we're in for one hell of an election night.
Yeah.
So
We really are. And I honestly think that the UK elections are the best because we take so long to count the votes.
yeah,
And that means that you can have the BBC and other channels doing cool maps and most notably things like the swingometer.
oh
So-
yeah. Do you want to explain the swingometer
So-
before we move on to explain anything else?
Yes. So
Okay.
So at the moment, the swingometer is done by a guy called Jeremy Vine, who is a notable presenter. And basically that says, in the last election, this constituency was, I don't know, X number of Conservative votes, X number of Labour votes. And we think it's going to go, 7% of that vote is going to switch from one party to another. So there's like a big arrow that points down and it goes on the slide backwards and forwards, and it's like a pendulum of a clock, and he sort of pushes it in the direction that we think it's going to go. That was one of the fun things about the 92 election. I think that they had to go ridiculously far along on the swingometer for some of theirs.
It's crazy. Like, I loved the 92. 92 must have been brilliant.
Yeah.
You had the best
I
Royal
highly-
Rumble
yeah.
and you had a good election.
I highly recommend watching that.
Yeah,
If
same here.
if you
Well, if you're at any party,
if you're
really.
any fight. It was,
Unless you're ultra partisan, in which case you'll be having
although
kittens
I
all
think
night.
last year they almost had to have 3-dimensional swingometers because of the weird way that the vote was going in some.
It was crazy. Now, this is the third election in 4 years.
Yes.
For various, we can't quite command the House reasons. So let's just say we want to finally get to command the House.
Yeah.
Okay, you're the prime. You're either Johnson or Corbyn, who are the most likely
Yeah.
people to win it. Okay, you get to the election night, you find out, yes, I think we're going to win. Nominally, 326 seats does it, because that's just one more than half of 650.
Yeah.
But you've got the Speaker and you've got the Sinn Féin seats, depending on how many they are,
Yeah.
to take away as well.
So it's about 320.
Usually 322 is often the notional majority. So let's say you have that. Then cool things happen.
Yeah.
They've got to go to the Queen to ask the Queen for permission to form a government. That's formal, she's not going to say no. And then the Queen says yes. Then the PM usually, the new PM would stand on the steps of Buckingham Palace.
Downing Street.
Declare what
He stands.
that they've won, declare what they stand for, what they're going to do, just a basic 5-minute address to the nation. And then the business of forming an actual government begins. Because at that point, he isn't even formally speaking the Prime Minister. You have to be voted by the House to be the Prime Minister, essentially. And again, that's formal. If you've got enough people to do it, then you can do it.
Yeah.
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 And then you have to form a government. I was asked to explain the difference between the government and Parliament
Yeah.
by someone. Parliament is simply the whole 650 people who are there to either make the laws or hold those who make the laws to account. The government are those who make the laws. The, for lack of a better term, winning team.
Yeah. So they're the ones who basically can decide what actually happens because they'll say, we're all on the same team, so we're all going to agree to this.
If they have the numbers.
If they have the numbers and if you don't have too many rebels in your party.
Yeah. So that's how that happens. And if you don't get a majority, like the Conservatives in 2010 or 17, you have to speak to other parties. 2010, it was the Liberal Democrats. 2017, it was the DUP in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And you have to come up with some sort of deal to try and get numbers to get votes passed.
So in 2010, it was the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats had a joint parliament.
And they had a full coalition.
And a full coalition. So Deputy Prime Minister was Nick Clegg, who is a Liberal Democrat. Whereas in 2017, it was just a sort of what they call confidence and supply.
Yeah.
So as long as the DUP would basically agree to go along with most of what the Conservatives wanted.
Yeah, the DUP could be kept enough on side for long enough that then the Conservatives could get by. And that was proving difficult this time. And that was one of the reasons why we ended up having an election.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I hope that's cleared that up. Anything else to explain?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I suppose we should say the cabinet that the government makes up is from MPs usually.
Yeah.
So it's not like outsiders coming in and say, like, here's an expert in defence, we'll make you a defence minister. It's more, here's an MP that I think would be good as defence minister.
Yeah. So often you'll find that someone might become a junior cabinet minister in one thing, and then they'll become a senior, and then they'll move around a lot and not necessarily always stick to the same subject.
Oh no, rarely are you in a post for a few years. It can happen.
Yeah.
But it's rare. And that government, providing they've got the numbers, should be able to stick it out for 5 years. The main confidence votes are like the budget, you need to get the budget passed, the Queen's speech, you need to get that passed, and so on. If you can't do that, or if you can, but it's, as Sir Alex Ferguson used to call it, squeaky bum time, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
And we'll be back here again.
One of the reasons that we're having this election is because there's been a lot of by-elections. So say an MP has died or stood down for whatever reason, then they have another election just for that constituency.
It's a good point. It's worth explaining by-elections, although that's not part of this election process.
But it's sort of what's helped to cause this particular general election.
Yeah, and there was always some in every term. So let's explain. By-elections are simply a one constituency election.
Yeah, if an MP doesn't want to be MP anymore, or they've died or something, then you need a replacement.
Yeah.
So that caused a lot of change. New parties, the new MPs weren't necessarily in the same party as the old MP, and that did not help the Conservative Party have enough people to get votes to pass.
Yeah. So I hope that's been useful. I hope that's been helpful. If there's anything we missed that you wanted to know, then let me know, and we'll try and clarify. But I hope you got a sense of A, what happens, and B, our sheer joy at election night.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna rule.
It's great fun.
Thanks, Isla.
No problem, Alan.